Hello, fellow travelers and leapers. It is Sam here from Fate's Wide Wheel. And this week we're talking about the season 2 premiere, the upcoming season 2 premiere of the revival of Quantum Leap season 2. I am really looking forward to having the discussions that I'm sure will be taking place in the days, hours, minutes following the premiere of season 2. This took too long. But before we get there, I did want to do a little bit of a preview, a little bit of an overview, and hopefully maybe, welcome some new listeners, some new watchers, not only to the podcast, but of course, to Quantum Leap. Here at Fate's Wide Wheel, of course, for anyone that is joining for the first time, part of the mission has always been, of course, to talk about Quantum Leap. That's how this all started. When Dennis and I started this thing, it was all about Quantum Leap. It was about the classic series, going episode by episode. Mammoth-sized discussions that were sometimes twice as long, if not longer, than the actual episode itself, to cover the original classic series. When we wrapped up, we didn't know exactly what we were going to do. We thought that there was a potential that we would maybe talk about other things, which is exactly what we did. We talked about some of the MCU shows. We talked about Parks and Recreation. We talked about The Good Place. We talked about a few other things here and there, some books. In choosing the name Fate's Wide Wheel, which is one of the titles that I threw out there, the idea was we could go anywhere and talk about anything we wanted to, so that we didn't necessarily always have to be restricted to just talking about Quantum Leap, right? Well, here we are, of course, 6 years later, and we're about ready to start season 2 of the revival, which we had no idea would be the case. So still talking about Quantum Leap. That said, we've definitely talked about a lot of other things, had some special guests on the show that aren't, might be adjacent to Quantum Leap, but not directly involved with Quantum Leap. And I certainly want to continue that. So as the season goes on, we're guaranteed 8 episodes. We know we're going to get those with the WGA strike resolving, and with SAG resuming negotiations with AMPTP this week. Hopefully SAG-AFTRA will be able to resolve their strike and have their terms met, so that production can resume on season 2. And if that happens, then we will likely get 13 episodes, fingers crossed for 18. I know that there are folks that really want that, and I'm not just talking about the fans. So I'm really hoping that that's something that we'll see happen within the next couple of weeks. If it does happen, that will indeed be time enough for them to get back in and start shooting the new episodes. Writers, of course, are already working on writing the rest of the season. I'm sure that there were ideas around. I'm sure that there were even maybe some stories already broken. But there was, as far as I'm aware, there was actually nothing completed. So there were no complete scripts prior to the strike occurring. They had finished, they were up to their 8, and that was kind of the plan, was to get those 8 out and then take a break and then come back and shoot the rest of the season. They knew that the strikes were a potential at the time, but it was not a case of like, let's just write as many scripts as we possibly can. So it'll be really interesting to see kind of, where they take things with what little I know about the rest of the season. I've only seen the first 3 episodes thus far. I'm sure that we've got some really cool stuff in store, and there's some really great places they can go if we get those additional 5 to 10 episodes. I'm really hoping that it's 10, so we can get that 18 number that we had for the first season. Let's talk a little bit about season 1. For a lot of folks that have listened to the show, watched the show, Fate's Wide Wheel, that is, that I am kind of all in on the premiere episode of season 2 being a great jumping on point for new viewers. So if you are not familiar with season 1 at all, if you're listening to this and you've never seen an episode of the revival, or you've even never seen an episode of the classic series, I firmly believe that jumping on with this first episode of season 2 is a great place to start watching the show. I don't think you're going to be too lost. There are definitely some things kind of in the prologue, if you will, that will be given to you, information about the characters in the prior season to bring you up to speed enough. But the story itself in the first episode really feels kind of self-contained, and it's just a wonderful piece of kind of this wonderful action adventure storytelling with some great character development as well. And the nice thing is that the character development that occurs, it does not feel like you have to know everything that came before to appreciate it, which is really cool and a testament to the writing and to the acting and the production of this episode. Martin Garrow, of course, the showrunner, executive producer of the show, he co-showrunner, executive producer, he wrote this episode and really had some incredible ideas that set the tone for the second season in general. And we'll talk more about that obviously after the premiere. And Raymond Lee is fantastic. Some of the guest cast also is fantastic. So I'm really looking forward again to those discussions. Season 1, however, for those that have not seen it, or of course, if you just need a memory refresh and you haven't been doing your Peacock rewatch, Season 1 took place over the course of 18 episodes, and we met Dr. Ben Song, Addison Augustine. We learned, of course, that Addison was his fiance, and their relationship was obviously central to the kind of just the heartbeat of the show. And Ben was on this crusade to save Addison. And there was a lot of speculation, of course, including on Fate's Wide Wheel, about what it was that he was going to try to save her from. Was he saving her life? Was he saving her from making a bad decision, etc.? Turns out he was indeed saving her life. A leaper from the future, Martinez, a Marine, he ended up going back in time to try to stop the project from happening, to stop Addison from leaping, because the original history, Addison was supposed to be the one that leaped. Of course, that didn't happen. Ben ended up leaping in her stead, and that really set everything in motion. Of course, we also met Jen and Ian, both of whom provide a lot of humor and depth to the show and different perspectives on the show. Jen has this past as a criminal, as a hacker who was in prison and ended up getting out and starting work on the project to provide security for the project. Ian, of course, they are a computer genius, and they have been working with Ziggy, getting Ziggy back up to speed, and they have sort of shepherded along a lot of the technology, not necessarily directly related to the leaping, to the time travel side of things, but the rest of the technology they've really been responsible for. Of course, they're also incredibly funny, played by the wonderful Mason Alexander Park, who has injected a lot of humor into the show. And of course, we saw a returning character from the classic series. That was none other than Herbert Magic Williams, played by Ernie Hudson. When Ernie's casting broke, I think there was a lot of excitement in the fandom, because it's Ernie Hudson. Even apart from Ghostbusters, there's just so many wonderful performances and genre appearances along the way. Of course, he'll always have an incredibly special place in my heart for his role in The Crow, which was a movie that was very big and important to me when I was 11, 12, 13. It came out when I was 13, but I had heard about the filming of the movie, and of course Brandon Lee's untimely end during the filming of the movie prior to its release. And I've always loved that performance from him. I think that he brings something that really helps to ground the film in this lovely way. And the relationship that he has with Brandon Lee's character, Eric Draven, is wonderful. But I digress, because of course I do. It's Fate's Wide Wheel. It wouldn't be if I didn't. And of course, Ernie is fantastic as Magic. Magic brings, not only is it a legacy character from the classic series, which really ties us in, which is wonderful, but he brings the stability, this sort of paternal quality to the project. And that of course is something else that we saw a lot in season 1, is that we got to see the project, which is not something that we saw hardly ever in the classic series. There were only a few times when we actually saw what was happening back at the project in the classic series. Oftentimes we only, well, not oftentimes, but almost exclusively, we only got a view from Sam's perspective, the leap. We saw Al, of course. Al was from, Sam's original time and would appear as a hologram to Sam, which is the role that Addison fills for Ben. But again, rarely did we ever actually see the project in the classic series. In the revival, however, we got to see the project almost every single week. In fact, I do think we saw it every single week in the series. And it provided the opportunity to not only build this wonderful ensemble of characters, but also infuse the story with even more of this sort of mystery box element where the characters are trying to figure out why Ben leaped, what he's trying to save Addison from, and what they can do to try to bring him home. And really a lot of the sort of the mythology of the show and the continuity of the show was built around those project scenes. Obviously, there were conversations that occurred on the leaps that Ben would have with Addison that did propel that momentum as well. But the project scenes also gave us the opportunity to see other characters and other legacy characters, for instance, like Beth, Al's widow, one of Al's daughters as well, Janice, played by Georgina Riley. And I think that one of the things that the writers did, especially as the season went on, is they found a way to really strike a great balance between the two. There were times, I think, early in the season when it did feel like the leap got a little bit of short shrift. You didn't get enough time to really appreciate some of the characters that Ben was interacting with, so the stakes didn't feel as high as they could for his missions, the adventures that our time traveler is on, which is something that the classic series did, so well. Not universally. There were some episodes where those supporting characters were pretty thin, but in general, the classic series was able to create these worlds from week to week to week that Sam inhabited and the characters around him, and you cared for those characters. And so it meant something that Sam was saving them or doing something to impact their lives in a positive manner. And I think that is something that the first season of the revival struggled to strike that balance. And on one hand, it's very easy to kind of write it a pass for that because we're trying to learn about this new ensemble of characters. And even within the new ensemble, we have guests like Janice, for instance, who we also need to care about and we need to learn information from. And it not just be an exposition dump. So it was obviously very difficult. The nice thing I think about coming into season 2 is that they are able to, and this is stuff that's already out there, so I don't feel like I'm spoiling anything. They are able to maybe spend a little bit more time on the leaps to give us characters that we're going to care a great deal about and raise the stakes on the leaps themselves, while already having these wonderful characters built, these kind of lived in roles with our regulars in the ensemble back at the project, so that we don't necessarily need to spend quite as much time with them. And also, we don't necessarily have the same kind of, ongoing mystery box sort of thing that was set up early, in the premiere episode, actually, of the first season. And I think without that, again, it gives us an opportunity to focus more on the leaps and more on the characters. It's not about it's not about a lot of the same stuff that the first season was. It's very refreshing, which is great. And you'll hear me say some of these things very similar to that in the overview of episode 1 when that drops following the premiere. So I don't want to speak too much, A, to avoid spoilers, but B, also because I don't want to repeat myself too much. But that said, I think that season 1, again, it did suffer on a couple of occasions due to the fact that we weren't able to invest as much in the leaps. And I think that as much as I defended and still would defend season 1 and what they were going for and how they were written, I can certainly say that there's legitimate criticism to be had with the show. It's Quantum Leap. It's about the leaps. It's about the adventures that Ben goes on, and I think that sacrificing any of that would be a shame. I think that the stakes of that, especially considering that when you have a continuing storyline, you're not going to get a payoff until down the road. So being able to tell something that's a little bit more self-contained while also having that other stuff going on is an incredibly difficult balance to strike. And once the team figured that out, I think that it was pretty incredible because we got some fantastic episodes along the way in season 1, and that's not to say that there weren't early episodes that were fantastic, because there were. I think episodes 3 and 4 in particular of the first season are standouts to me. 3, the boxing episode, somebody up there likes Ben, still stands out as one of the best episodes of the entire season for me. So that's not to say like, oh, those early episodes aren't great. That's just not true. And there are elements of the first 2 episodes even that I love. I mean, Atlantis, the space shuttle episode, just has some incredible stuff. And as we start to learn more about Ben throughout the course of the episodes too, it's just, he's so endearing and so charming, and we're drawn to him, which is great. Of course, as the season went on, like I said, that balance really started to shift a little bit more. We started to get, I think, these leaps that even if we weren't spending quite as much time as we would have been in the original series, for instance, they started to feel more complete. I started to feel more invested in the individual characters. And that for me was a huge win. And in particular, once they came back from the holiday break, we just saw some incredible leaps and a great balance struck between the project and the leaps, which is awesome and essential, I think, to the success of this iteration of Quantum Leap. Of course, you know, the mystery throughout the season as things unfolded and we learned more about, you know, Ben's mission and why Ben, you know, left when he did and why he enlisted Janice. The big reveal, of course, came when we found out that it was Ian who traveled from the future to inhabit Dottie, played by the wonderful Shakina, who also wrote and directed the episode Let Them Play. They were the one that warned Ben about what was going to happen, and their warning was enough to propel Ben into his mission to save Addison. And by the time we got to the final episode, we actually got to see Ben go into the future and talk to future Ian, which was incredible. And we got this wonderful scene during the course of the Judgment Day, the finale, with the 3ins as I believe I can't remember if it was the editing team or somebody in the production team. So someone, of course, coined that. It wasn't me. Piper Cruz, one of the editors, she was the one that told me about it. But we see the 3 Ians, we see the 3ins working together across the timeline in this really kind of interesting way. And you can easily put like this sort of fantastical, metaphysical kind of thing on it, or you can chalk it up to coincidence, whatever you want. It's left open-ended enough that it's not like this is magic or whatever, but it was, not the character, but that it was just incredibly well done and really cool to see that we see Ian across 3 timelines, because one of the things that happens, of course, over the course of Judgment Day is that Ben visits the future. We, of course, see the present day at the project, and then we see Ben in the past, in the project's past, at the sort of the beginning of the project, which is really cool. And then there's the final showdown with Martinez, and Ben ends up back in Salvation, which was episode 5, I believe. And yes, it was episode 5, and the Western episode. And his life is basically saved by one of the members of the community of Salvation and one of the townspeople. And it's just a wonderful way to kind of wrap things up, I felt like, for that storyline. And you can, of course, go back and listen to any of the individual reviews for those episodes, which are packed with interviews with the creative team as well, actors, writers, producers, to get more in depth about those individual episodes. But that's a ramshackle kind of overview of season 1, which can lead you into season 2. You know, I gave a bit of a season 2 preview based off of the 3 episodes that dropped as screeners a few weeks ago. So again, at the risk of rehashing, I don't want to say too much, but just briefly, I think you can expect a lot more of the leaps. You're going to see some really incredible character development. I think that the show has already stepped up a notch from where it was in season 1. And I'm someone who really, really enjoyed season 1. And again, you know, there were 3 or 4 episodes at least over the course of season 1 that I am eager for the creative team to surpass, because if they do, then it means that we're going to get some incredible stuff, because there are at least 3 or 4 episodes off the top of my head that I could name in season 1 that I just thought were fantastic in so many different ways. And I think that they're going to tackle a lot of different subject matter over the course of the season. They're going to be able to use that empathy engine a number of times to really get the audience to reflect on the world around them, on past events, on present events, on what the future might mean for us, while also giving us these great like adventure stories. And I think that striking that balance is also essential to Quantum Leap. I mean, obviously heart and history, that's one of the, or two rather, 2 of the 3 H's that Deborah Pratt has spoken about before. And so I'm really, really looking forward to episodes that I haven't seen yet, but I can certainly say that the episodes that I have seen, I think people are really going to enjoy. And I think that the first 3 weeks will bring us a lot of great stuff. Not only, of course, does it feel like the production has stepped up a bit, there's something about the overall look of the show that just feels a little bit more dare I say, natural, real. It doesn't feel heightened. It never feels, to me, it never felt cheap. I think it benefits a lot from some great location shooting. A great deal from the location shooting, quite frankly. Like, the location shooting is one of those things that as you see it, you're just sort of like, I never wanted them to be on a set again, except for the project, obviously. But it's excellent to see that. You know, the circumstances that the characters are put in over the course of just the first 3 episodes provide the actors some wonderful material. And I think that we are going to really be taking notice, you know, sitting up in our chairs at the work that's being done by the entire cast, because there's some wonderful stuff from our regulars. The guest casts, which I, you know, can't really say much about. The guest casts do some wonderful work. Our 2 new recurring characters, I can certainly say that Hannah is just great. Let's just leave it at that. And so, yeah, there's a lot of excitement. There's going to be a lot of great stuff to be had for the viewers. And again, if you're tuning in for the first time to see Quantum Leap as a new viewer, starting with the second season is fine. It really is. I think it will inspire you to go back and kind of fill in the blank with season 1, but I don't think that you're going to be lost. I think you're going to be able to watch that first episode and appreciate the story, appreciate these characters for who they are. And I think that you're going to be able to have enough interest to then maybe go back and fill in some of those blanks to get a fuller picture. But I don't think that it's necessary, which is wonderful, and a testament again to the creativity and the spirit and the talent of the people that are involved. I'm going to say something real quick. I don't know if I should say it, but I will say that in conversations that I've been able to have with the creative team, that everyone is really excited to be working on the show and be back to working on the show. And they're looking forward to talking about it. And, you know, whenever that can happen, I certainly hope that they get to do it here on Fate's Wide Wheel for all of you. But regardless of what outlet they choose to do that in, or what outlet is selected for them, because sometimes that happens too, I will certainly be glued to it, because I can't wait to hear it, because the enthusiasm that I've gotten already, it's infectious. And it makes you feel good when something that you love is being worked on by people who love what they're doing, and who are good at it. And I feel like we're, you know, for genre television, we're very fortunate, because it feels like that's happening on other shows right now as well. You know, you hear some of the stuff that surrounded, for instance, the season 3 of Picard, or Strange New Worlds. You know, you hear about people that are really enjoying what they're doing, loving what they're doing. You know, you hear about the creative team, unfortunately, with Star Trek Prodigy, with everything that's kind of happening with that, how invested they were with the show, and how they want the fans to be able to experience the show as well. So it's really wonderful to hear that. And it does not feel like a case of like, you know, oh, well, it's the fans, you know, running the ship, and it's just all fan wank or whatever. It just feels like, no, we've got people that are really excited to make this stuff. And we're lucky we get to kind of profit from it as fans, which is great. So I'm looking forward to seeing, again, what the rest of season 2 looks like, and even more so what everyone has to say about it. So, you know, if they want to do it here, awesome. They're always welcome. But if not, then track it down, because again, I think it's going to be infectious and enlightening, which is great, because the show deserves it, and it deserves you as a viewer. So make sure that you tune in on Wednesday, October the 4th, 8 p.m. 7 Central on NBC. You can watch the episode live, or you can catch it the following day on Peacock. I believe it'll drop around early in the morning, 7 a.m. Eastern, something like that, but you can catch it anytime throughout the day. Quick note about the premiere episode. I will not be live tweeting it, unfortunately. It's really unfortunate. I'm sad. I will definitely miss that. But my spouse will be out of town. She's going to a work convention. So I'm holding the fort down with the kiddos, and I will, be doing bedtime duty at that particular time. So unfortunately, I will not be able to live tweet. But maybe that's okay. Maybe the live tweets don't work. Maybe some people aren't really invested or engaged in them anyway. I don't know. Some people seem to like them. But I will, of course, be dropping my review immediately following the airing of the episode. I will be solo, so it'll probably be pretty short, but I will give my full thoughts on it, and just dig in to everything that I possibly can about the episode. again, just due to the nature of the strikes and the things that have been going on, it will be guestless. There won't be a special guest or anything like that. I'm certainly hoping that at some point we can get someone on, you know, whether it's Martin, which would be awesome, or, you know, one of the guests, of course, that we've had before on the show, or one of the actors, someone we can get on to talk a little bit more in depth about, you know, specifics with the episode will be great, but that'll be something that comes later. For Wednesday, it'll just be me solo, giving you my thoughts on the episode and where we might go from there. Of course, one of the things I'm really looking forward to is hearing what you all have to say. So whatever you have to say, you don't necessarily have to, you know, throw it directly my way, but if you want to, feel free to post a comment on this video, or of course on the video that drops with my review. Send an email. You know, find me on X or Threads or Blue Sky or Instagram, whatever the case might be. The Facebook group also is a great way to do it, because I really do want to hear your thoughts. Of course, I'll be kind of, you know, trolling the social media to see what the general tenor is and see, you know, what people think about the episode, and kind of synthesizing some of those and responding to some of those on the following episode, because I'm tentatively planning on releasing 2 episodes a week during the course of this season. That might seem like a lot of content. Trust me, I know, because I'm the one that's going to be doing it. But I really feel like it will give the fandom, it'll give us an opportunity to have some great kind of water cooler conversations without necessarily having to, you know, have these sort of big moments on Zoom and whatnot. So I will certainly be endeavoring to do that, to provide some kind of responses to what's going on, while also, of course, providing the reviews of the individual episodes, which will drop immediately following the airing of the episode. All that said, I'm going to leave this there. This is a short one, because that's the other thing. If I'm going to drop 2 episodes a week, they'll probably be relatively short, unless, you know, interviews start coming in. And then, as you know, I like to talk, and luckily it seems like most of the people that come on the show like to talk. So we've had some nice, long, in-depth interviews, and I look forward to providing those for you again very, very soon. In the meantime, please hit the like button, subscribe, follow Fate's Wide Wheel on any of the social media platforms. Follow Fate's Wide Wheel on all of the social media platforms. You can follow me if you want to, but I don't really post a lot of stuff personally these days. You know, if you're on Facebook, you'll see some stuff with the theater, etc., every once in a while, or you know, family stuff and whatnot. But that's about the extent of it. So. Yeah, like, subscribe. If you want to support the show as a patron, first of all, that's amazing. I can't believe it. I mean, my mind is blown still to this day. I am overwhelmed by the generosity, the fact that there are people that are supporting the show in that way. It means a lot, and it really does help keep the show going, because you know, especially being a one-person show right now, it's sometimes it's difficult to really keep everything going, you know, from a work perspective, but also from a financial perspective. So it really, really helps to keep the lights on, and I really appreciate it. But of course, before you do that, before you know, throw any money towards Fate's Wide Wheel, take a look around your community. See if there's something you can do to help set right some wrongs if you can. If you want to help the world at large, I will always recommend the charities, the Trevor Project and Doctors Without Borders. I love those charities, near and dear to my heart. I personally support them. And, you know, you can do your due diligence and check them out, but they are worth it. Absolutely 100%. If after all of that, however, you still want to throw some money towards Fate's Wide Wheel, well, thank you so very much. Check out the Patreon, sign up. There will be watch parties like there were last season. However, there won't be one for the premiere, and that just kills me, and I'm so sorry, but it's just not something I'm able to do logistically. However, that is something that will be occurring down the road. There will also be early access to future content, especially the interviews. They will not be behind a paywall. They will be available for everyone, but they will be available early access for Patreon subscribers. So check out Fate's Wide Wheel on Patreon if you can. That would be wonderful. I gave a shout out last week to a couple of our patrons, and I want to continue doing that. And this week, it is oddly specific with Audra. First of all, you've been so kind and generous, and always provided an excellent dialogue, while also just being incredibly supportive. And you've reached out at times, you know, because of the show, but also sometimes even on a personal level. And I really appreciate that. And the amount of friends that I feel like I have been able to make along the way is very impactful and very meaningful. And I certainly count you among those. So I feel very lucky for that. And I'm so glad that you're a part of this community. community. And I feel like you bring a lot to the table, and it's been a joy to not only follow you on social media, but to have some of those personal conversations. And I'm looking forward to continuing that. And of course, the door will always be open to our patrons to eventually, to come on the show as well. Working that out scheduling wise might be a little hairy, but we'll figure it all out. So Audra, thank you so very much. Really, really appreciate you and appreciate your support along the way. So thank you so much for that. Again, if you want to become a patron, hit us up over at Patreon on or at Fate's Wide Wheel. But in the meantime, it's definitely time to get out of here. I gotta go. I got things to do. But I just want to say thank you so much. I appreciate you. Take care of yourselves. Take care of one another. Stay safe out there. And remember, always, always leap responsibly.